Hello and welcome to the OnTableTop Industry Awards for the year of our Lord 2023. I am joined by Jerry, Ben, and Lloyd as we embark upon this journey where we're going to be looking back at the best that 2023 had to offer from our esteemed colleagues and creators out there in the industry. I gotta say, all joking aside, this is a real highlight for me. Okay, it's a privilege for us to do what we do on Tabletop. We get to study and analyze and just keep a general watch of an entire industry all year long. And during that year, a number of us are busy keeping tabs on everything that's going on. And as things come out, they think to themselves, oh, that might fall into a category for the annual awards. So this is a year-long effort for some. And for others, we get to breeze in and enjoy the show. So I just want to say a personal thank you to the team, and I want to say a massive thank you to the community for your continued support over that entire year. And I also want to say a huge congratulations to our industry who are still out there fighting tooth and nail for their existence and for them to bring us new, interesting, innovative, off-the-wall ideas and products. And I hope that this, I suppose, somewhat of a recap of some of the things that did come out over 2023 will spark your interest at home and remind you of some of the awesome that does come out of the industry, especially our indies out there who have their nose to the grind all the time. Right, without further ado, let's get stuck in, and I will pass over to the Ben and Jerry, the sweetness of the Industry Awards of 2023.
Thank you very much.
You're very welcome.
Good, isn't it?
What an intro. That's great.
Yeah. we are indeed sweet, as anybody will know.
Uh-huh.
We are the Tasty Boys.
The Tasty Boys.
It's stuck. There we go.
Yeah. Right. We have a whole host of categories to get through. The first one up, Ben, is for the best terrain collection of 2023.
Yeah, so as you know, no tabletop is complete without a wonderful selection of terrain in order to play your games around. You can paint all the lovely armies that you like, but if you don't have some nice terrain, it'll all just look a little bit bland. And so we have a couple of nominations for this. And
before you get to that, just out of curiosity for the folks at home, I just want to quickly look at the process of this. So we're down to our final three, of which we'll be picking the runner-up and the winner. And this is all a choice done by the esteemed team here within OnTableTop. Yes. However, it didn't start out at three. No. These have been big, long lists that have had to whittle down. Yeah,
so some of them have been very long indeed.
They have, yes. There's been a lot of entrants for all of these categories that are all amazing. It turns out that it's quite hard to narrow it down to just three and then eventually two of all of these. And there are so many amazing projects out there from lots of different people.
Some of the lists took longer to cut down than Jerry's hair. That's how big they were.
Very true. Very true.
Just wait till you get to the indies.
I wanted to let folk know that this is it's a big old process for Ben and Balin to get through this. So, yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to be starting things off with the folks at Gale Force 9. Last year, they released possibly one of the most amazing terrain sets that I think has come out for BattleTech fans anyway. So this is the Hex Text Terrain series that they created, which is based off 3D printed or 3D printable products by a company called Thunderhead Studio. But then what Gale Force 9 did is they stepped in and they took the range and they made them effectively part of their kind of Battlefield in a Box style range, where you're able to pick this stuff up, slap it down to a tabletop, and it's essentially just ready to go. They did a whole host of different bits and pieces for this over the course of last year. Started out with the urban center, which was some of the larger skyscrapers and all sorts of different things as part of Trinity City. But as things moved on, they started to create additional road sections, and also they did sort of rural wasteland areas as well, based on sort of like desert landscapes and things, which I thought was quite nice. Obviously, the nice thing about these is that they came completely fully painted, so it's simply just a case of smacking them down the tabletop. And because they have that hex grid already built into things, that obviously means they're great if you're using these to essentially create your layout as it is, using the road sections and stuff. But if you built this into lots of the hex maps that people already have for BattleTech and stuff, that obviously means they're perfect for that too, which is great. And you just sort of slot them in and away you go, really. Obviously mentioning BattleTech there, but these are great for a whole host of games of that kind of scale, sort of 6, 8, 10 mil. And I know a lot of people have been picking these up to use them for things like Drop Zone Commander and all sorts of games as well. And even a little bit of Legions Imperialis with a little bit of a dirty down on those buildings, perhaps. And it's only growing as we move into the rest of this year as well. They've already got another couple of waves lined up.
Absolutely stonking. Myself and John had a look at them whenever we got the first wave of them came in, because obviously John's a big BattleTech fan. But beyond the hexness of them, the buildings and the like come with optional bases. So if you don't play hex map type games, you don't have to put the hex on. You can just pick them up as 6/10 mil-esque buildings for anything in and around that scale. So
moving on. We have a second set of terrain for us to dive into, this time from the folks at Cromlech, always doing amazing stuff when it comes to terrain. They have been working on stuff for a very, very long time. They've far outgrown the idea of just being the guys who make awesome orcs, although they still make awesome orcs. But this one goes to a particular set of terrain that they sort of came up with, I think it was toward the middle period of last year, which was the industrial grim dark terrain set that was used to create their industrial sector. So this was a new wave of stuff that they created that was obviously sort of themed around the idea of Warhammer 40,000 and the Adeptus Mechanicus and things like that. But of course, you could slot these into all sorts of different games as you see fit. The thing that was really nice about this stuff was that I loved the amount of detail that they have managed to work into everything. It's no longer just looking at stuff as kind of like MDF is just this flat pack thing that you put together and then you have to work really hard to get all the details into it and everything like that. Companies like Cromlech have gone that extra mile and created amazing pieces like this. The other thing that I love was all the curves and the different shapes that they managed to work into the terrain set, building on it to create something that's not just, as we say, that kind of boxy look to things. And it just created a fantastic range that I think would be at home on basically anybody's grim dark tabletop, whichever you were going for. The other thing that's really nice about the stuff that Cromlech do is that they tend to mix together lots of different elements. So they have MDF, which is always great, obviously, but then they also throw in resin components as well. So things like statues and all that kind of stuff to kind of enhance what you're getting on the tabletop and really build on the character of the sort of terrain that you're building.
Which is great. It's the way to go. It breaks up that flat MDF look.
Exactly. Yeah. And I mean, you get pieces like this, which are just wild. Like, you know, it's the kind of stuff that maybe 5 years ago people were like, "Nah, you can't do that."
Yeah.
But Cromlech stepping in and doing amazing pieces, as you can see.
I absolutely love the balls.
Yes.
so much so that I was going, are they one of the resin pieces? Because they're everywhere on a lot of the different industrial sector bits and bobs there. And having gone off and had a nosy through their range, I discovered that they're not actually resin pieces. They are part of the MDF kit,
Really?
where people just have to knuckle down and put together a few pieces. It's like building a beach ball. If I do this, I can actually bring up the refinery plans. So if I go into the refinery, you can see the ball is actually
There you go. Yeah.
a piece that sort of folds down.
Mm-hmm.
And I have to say, in all of their pictures, they don't look seamless. They look like they are seamed. They look like somebody's taken a big piece of steel and riveted to another big piece of steel to make a large gas-containing globe. But it just goes to show that the MDF world doesn't stop at flat things. It's broken into a whole new dimension of curves.
So we have stopped just layering slices of
It's no
MDF.
longer stacking.
You don't have to make circles out of smaller pieces. Yeah.
You won't have to make a train in the future, Lloyd, using 150 little coins of MDF. Somebody
Break
will
out
just
the paper mache.
somebody will just circle that off, and you'll be good to go.
The third of the nominations that we're going to be looking at sort of stays within the realm of MDF and stuff like that. And this is from the folks at Warcradle Scenics, who again have had a stonking year when it comes to creating amazing terrain for use on the tabletop. There were plenty of sets that we could have chosen for this, but the one that we settled on, I think, is the one that sort of took our breath away the most when we saw it, and effectively drew us in every single time we were talking about it, thinking about different games we could use it for and everything like that. And this was the Miscum Town set that they created. So this is, again, a collection of wonderful pieces that you can use in a variety of different games. Obviously, with the name Miscum, this obviously sort of conjures up mystical ideas. You could use this for something Cthulhu-esque, perhaps. Elder signs everywhere and in between everything. But of course, you could use it for games like Mythos or Malifaux and pretty much every game in between again as well. And the thing that's really nice about this stuff is that it's all kind of colored, so you just sort of snap it together and away you go, which is always nice to see. And it's always fully detailed and has lots of little touches here and there. Like, I know one of the things that we saw when we got the pub pop-up was that it was called the Elder Sign, which is just a lovely little nod. And it shows that the designers and the creators behind the range are just having a little bit of fun, sort of designing fun things for this, which I think is really nice. Because all the exteriors and the interiors are all fully detailed as well, it just sort of sets the scene for you to sort of actually use the buildings as they should be intended. They're not just something to sort of stick on the table and run around. You use these sets to kind of actually play around inside them and, you know, skirmish, which I think is a really nice addition. And it's also the fact that these sets come with lots of additional extras and things. So you get things like the fences and the news agents and the cars and everything as well. And so it just creates a really nice collection that kind of enhances the narrative nature of what you're playing on the tabletop. It also just means that maybe buy yourself some of those fun packs of terrain from the folks at Mantic, slap them inside those buildings, and away you go. You've got fully doll-housed up buildings, which I think is always nice to see. You too can throw chairs and things at your friends within your building. So, yeah, it's very nice stuff there from them.
It's a beautiful way to go, yeah. And it has that 1920s feel, but also the, like you say, the pulp aspect of everything, where it's really leaning into the Cthulhu mythos, which is obviously great for mythos and Wild West Exodus and things like that. If you want to transpose them into 1920s-esque gangster London feely or Boston.
For me, it's got that real Nero Wolfe feel to the whole thing. So
I wonder if he'd pop up, yeah.
Oh, yes. I just look at it. Oh, I just want to play a detective prohibition game on that. It'll be amazing.
And they're bigger for hamsters too.
Yes.
if you can train them not to eat it. Imagine a hamster with a top hat running around in there.
Oh my God, it's birds and badgers. No, I knew we'd find a way to put it in here somewhere.
He always does. He always will. It's just how the man goes, I suppose. Right, those are our 3 nominations then. So who is our runner-up then?
The runner-up for the year 2023 and the OnTableTop Industry Awards goes to Cromlech and their industrial sector. So congratulations to you. Fantastic runner-up, as you can imagine there. The winner of the best terrain collection of 2023, however, goes to, and this may have been because John was behind me with a gun, is the Hextech terrain range from Gale Force 9. Absolutely fantastic stuff. Really nice to see that on the tabletop. Again, sort of catering to people who are playing games at that scale, and lots more to come in 2024 as well. So yes, very awesome stuff there too.
Absolutely stunning winner. And just the fact that Thunderhead Studio have so much, they've been working on it for years. The fact that Gale Force 9's buddied up with them means they've got a massive wealth of designs that they can draw on. So hopefully all of them will be capable of being cast and printed, or printed and cast rather. Because obviously with 3D designs, you can do things that you can't normally do in a industrial manufacturing. But so far, the transition from digital into a physical product for people who don't do the ones and zeros is fantastic. And the fact that somebody splash paint on it is great.
Congratulations, guys. Right, what's our next category?
Next up, it's the role-playing games that caught our eye in 2023, of which there'd be quite a lot last year, actually. An absolutely outstanding amount of stuff here, there, and everywhere. And we've whittled it down to these 3. And first up is from Free League, Dragonbane.
Mm.
So this is a classic revisited from the guys in Sweden. This is essentially their Dungeons and Dragons. When America and the UK were getting into Dungeons and Dragons, somebody from Sweden had already come across essentially, I think it was RuneQuest or Glorantha, one of the other. So another sort of old school classic. They brought it back to Sweden, and that was the one that grew in that country. They hadn't heard of Dungeons and Dragons; it was a different age. So they've been able to come along and revamp the whole thing for a new generation of mirth and mayhem, as they say, which is always good, clean family fun. I
love that
feel.
tagline.
Yeah. And I mean, it sums up what most RPGs are like, because you may start as some sort of grim Excalibur-esque film when you start your RPG, but you end up being Monty Python and the Holy Grail.
Yeah.
We all know this.
Every
It's just how it goes. I mean, it's one of those things that happen, fish by hooks. So the Dragonbane RPG, as you can see, is, I mean, the illustrations are gorgeous. Johan Ehrkrans has done a spectacular job on them. But not only that, they've sort of streamlined and changed up the rules. They're still noticeably like the old school RuneQuest, but with some interesting tweaks that make it a bit more accessible for modern day. They've also gone with an OGL license on it as well, which means people can print and have been printing their own books, either free to give away or for sale under that license. So even though it's not been out long, they're already starting to ramp up quite a catalog, which is one of the things that always engages the community, being able to feed in and build on that. So it's great to see somebody just going full on old school once again and saying, you know, Dragonbane, it's great. Let's butcher dragons together. I'm sure nothing bad will happen.
Yeah, I really liked the streamlining, as you say, of the mechanics that they put into the game, and it's got a feel of kind of D&D, still use D20s and all that kind of thing, but they've put a lot of stuff in there to make it so it's very much action forward, narrative forward, sort of pushing that storyline. The other thing that I think was really nice about the game is the way that they've handled monsters as well, where it's not just you deciding what the monster's got to do. You've got like little behavior tables and things that you can use, which is really great for storytellers who are trying to kind of work out what a creature should be doing in a particular situation. And I love that they threw that in there. That also the way that they've handled a lot of things like damage and wounds and things like that just feels a little bit more as well, like story based, rather than it being sort of, you know, straight and out kind of like numbers game, which I think is always nice to see.
Our next nomination is another old school classic revived.
It's the time of the return in 2023.
It seems to be a retro-like time that we're looking at. This time round, it's Werewolf the Apocalypse, the 5th edition from Renegade Game Studios. And this is another classic, one that I remember well. I have first, second, and possibly even third editions behind me. So the World of Darkness is to RPGs what Games Workshop and Warhammer is to tabletop miniatures. For a lot of people, it's their first experience with role-playing. As you can see, there's a whole slew of different types. The Apocalypse itself, modern day, the werewolf players are on the cusp of the apocalypse. Everything's gone horribly wrong. They were the protectors of Earth. They have failed. Every time the temperature goes up by 1 degree, another werewolf goes absolutely buck mental and murders a whole village. But once again, the studio has done a fantastic job in revamping the look of it. I mean, it's not a game that requires a massive change, either mechanically or story-wise. If there was one thing you could say about the original, is that the artwork in it was very up and down. Very up and down. And as you can see, they've done some outstanding work in not just pushing the artwork further forward, but also bringing a lot more color into it as well. You're not looking at 200 odd pages of black and white illustrations. There's, you know, full color throughout, and it really makes it a richer take home for people. So nice.
The thing that was great for me about this is that it was, as you say, taking me back to my childhood, I guess. It's a bit more adult than that, I guess. But
I picked up 80. I picked up my copy in 89, Ben.
Oh,
so
yeah. So, I was playing this when I was about 12, 13. So I would have been slightly further on than that, I guess. But yes, the thing that was really nice about this new edition of The Apocalypse is that it took everybody back to that particular point in time. There'd been changes within World of Darkness as they'd moved into sort of playing around with different ideas and themes, and Werewolf the Forsaken was a great game, but it just wasn't the game that everyone had loved back in the day, and they'd taken away so much of the stuff that made it really cool, that kind of eco-warrior thing that we're talking about. I mean, what tribe is Greta Thunberg? We'll have to work that one out in the comments. But
Fenris.
Fenris.
That was a quick one.
Imagine, little tiny Greta Thunberg turns into a massive werewolf.
I can't not think of that.
But yeah, so taking it back to that kind of thing that everybody loved, all of that mythology was still carried through in the new edition, which I thought was really nice to see as well. But then the thing that you say that I think really makes a difference is that they've sort of set it against the modern world as well. So they've taken a lot of stuff that maybe was a little bit weird, maybe potentially in the older books, and they've kind of updated it and tweaked it, which I think is a really nice thing as well. So it's an inviting game, but it's still one of those things that is fantastic for old school werewolf players to dive into and have some fun with. And yeah, the art's amazing. I will all forever be a Fenris. I will ever be a Kronos. Yeah.
You're Gnosis, that's what you are.
Yeah.
Right. We have one final nomination, and that is Imperium Maledictum, the unpronounceable, from Cubicle 7. And this was my favorite of the 40k style RPGs that are coming out, because there's an awful lot of RPGs out there where you play the massive hero, getting in there, throwing yourself around and beating everybody to a pulp. And in 40k, everybody wants to be a space marine, and it all becomes hero versus monster of the week. You lose the idea of actually playing a character. You just become a giant stat stick looking to bump people off. But Maledictum does two things. First of all, it makes you a complete dunger. There are billions of souls, if not hundreds of billions or trillions in the Imperium, and not everybody gets to be a space marine. Most people just are grist to the mill, and this harkens back to more like Warhammer Fantasy roleplay, as far as your lot in life. It's not a happy one. You might become a hero. Much more likely you're going to be used by your patron to get him further up the wheel, I suppose, where you're just the grease in the cogs. And if a few of you get chewed up on your way through, then so be it. I mean,
it's all fine and dandy.
It is all fine and dandy. And as you can see, if I skip Sionzi a bit, the artwork throughout, I mean, is absolutely stunning. It really gives the sense of where you are in the Imperium, how it functions, and just how massive it is, which means you can play huge Vista-like games where you're planet hopping, or you can drill right down into the nitty-gritty on one particular planet. People spend their whole lives never moving away from an area, and when the spires are hundreds of miles tall above a planet, then maybe you don't need to. These city worlds, these metropolises that you never really see much of, because your little lot in life is to keep the soup machines filled on level 5, and that's all you're ever going to do. But then all of a sudden a body turns up and he's high ranking and your prints are all over him. Oh my God. So yeah, I just love the return to normality of a character.
As normal as it can get.
As normal as it can get, even if you've got a voice modulating box on you because you're some sort of servitor-esque thing creeping around the place.
Let's play for that.
Yeah.
But has it got Murph?
It doesn't. It might do.
It has the
later.
darkest of Murph.
It does when we're playing it.
Yeah. The thing that I really liked about Imperium Maledictum is, again, it sort of harkened back to, as you say, sort of older versions of Warhammer 40,000 role plays. Like Dark Heresy was the game that kind of is the sort of spiritual predecessor, I guess, to this one. And the fact that they've sort of gone back to the D100 mechanic for Imperium Maledictum was a really nice way of kind of getting deeper into the granularity of things. It's no less brutal than older editions of the game as well. Things will fly off you when you're shot. living is a mere dice roll away, and death is equally so. The thing that I think is really nice about the game as well is that sort of addition of the Patreon system, as you say, bringing that in to have almost this additional character that is sort of lording over you. And the other thing that's really nice about it is that the games master has influence on that, but primarily it's driven by the players. And so they're the ones that come up with which effectively is going to become their downfall. It's something out of like an Eisenhorn novel, which I think is great. And it's a fantastic game. We've played it on the channel, had lots of fun with it. And I think a lot of people are going to be doing the same as well.
Right. Those are our nominations for the best RPG. And our runner-up is Dragonbane from Free League Publishing. Ooh. Mirth and mayhem, and you can even be an angry duck.
You can.
Which, go full Donald on somebody. It's always good, clean, and fun. So, of our two remaining, I know which one Ben wants to win, but our winner is Warhammer 40,000 Imperium Maledictum from Cubicle 7. So, like I say, it's just such a evocative and weirdly the only one that isn't an old game brought back but feels like an old game.
Yes.
So how about that then, kids?
Congratulations once again to our winners. Shall we bring in some of the other team members and continue our journey through the best that 2023 had to offer?
Okay, welcome John, welcome Justin to our review of 2023 via the medium of chucking awards at people.
Well, at their heads?
Yes.
Depends.
How will they remember if it's not indented in this?
Well, that's a new version of Airmail.
Yeah.
All comes down to how vicious their postman is, I suppose.
If it's Hermes, yeah.
I don't know, Royal Mail can be sassy.
Oh. Yeah. Watch out if you are having an award delivered to you.
Right, we have drafted you in for the next two awards. And Ben, what is the next category?
So the first one I'm going to be starting off with is the best card game. So this is the best card game of 2023. And with this one, we're going to be diving into a couple of games. Well, some of them resurgent, some of them entirely new. Talking of resurgent, though, we're going to be kicking things off with a game that everyone thought was dead and gone forever and was never coming back. But it will always return. The algorithm will make it so.
Snap?
Yes, Snap. Welsh Snap in particular, though. That's the most vicious one. And it involves leaks. No, we're going to be looking at Keyforge Winds of Exchange. So a lot of people will know that Keyforge was the game that came out quite a few years ago now, which was built on the idea that every deck that you picked up was going to be unique. It would all have its own ideas and stuff. All the cards in it would be familiar across a variety of different packs, but every single pack of cards would be entirely different, and it would allow you to dive into games completely off, for free, diving in, sort of like picking up a pack, sitting down at the tabletop, just start playing a game, work out how your deck worked, and see how it went, which I thought was a great idea for a game.
Yay, no deck building.
Exactly. The mechanics were also great. They came from the mind behind Magic the Gathering as well, which was a fantastic thing. So it was one of those games that you could sit down and play in the pub or at a local store or anywhere in between and just have a lot of fun with it. I really enjoyed it. But then the algorithm broke. And Fantasy Flight Games were like, we can't work out how to fix this. And so last year, we actually got to see the return of Keyforge through Ghost Galaxy, who brought us back with Winds of Exchange and effectively rebirthed the game back into reality. It was gone, it was forgotten, and now it has returned and is bigger and brighter than ever. It has managed to avoid the event and is now starting to get played in tournaments and stores all over the place. And I think it's been absolutely fantastic to see it come back. The algorithm is working again. Your unique decks are back and they're better than ever. There's more faction. There was more mechanics that were thrown into the game as well. And it was generally just given a little bit of a tighten up and a little bit of a tweak to make it so that it was a game that you could dive into and have a lot more fun with your friends. I really liked what they'd done with Winds of Exchange, kind of like playing around with new mechanics and that new faction, as I say, the Equidons, which I thought was quite fun, and also sort of pushing on the storyline as well, which I think was a really nice thing for them to do. Effectively, it's a little bit more like an expansion than, I guess, a new edition of a game, but because it's been rebirthed into the world, I think it sort of fits into this category. And
definitely. Yeah.
Fun to see it back on the tabletop once more with their gorgeous artwork.
The idea that you don't have to go digging through 150 boosters at $5 a touch to get together 60 cards in and of itself is got to be worth its weight in gold.
Yeah. I mean, the idea of leveraging what you're given versus someone going off and meta-braining the ever-loving hell out of it just makes me happy.
Yeah.
Kind of what has been forced upon card games is that whole you need to hunt the meta to make it work, where this really is sort of more of a gateway card game, really, where it's like, here it is, this is what you play with, this is all you need, let's go and teach you something. So
but that feels lighter and more fun to me.
Yeah, definitely so. Talking of light and fun, and also gateway card games as well, but taking it from a slightly more traditional angle, there was another game that absolutely blew the doors off events last year, and that came from Ravensburger, and that is Disney Lorcana. It would be remiss not to include this game in this collection because it basically took the card game world by storm. For those people who haven't heard of Disney Lorcana, it is a card game set in the Disney world where you take on the role of Disney heroes and villains and everyone else in between as you're fighting to sort of ink your way through your games and collect as much lore as possible before your opponent does the same thing. The mechanics themselves are very simple and easy to dive into, and I think that's what made the game so approachable and such a big hit, is that it was not just one of those card games that like adult card gamers could get into and have fun with, especially those people who love their Disney, of course. But it was also one of those games that you could sit down with your kids and they could immediately get how to play the game after maybe 1 or 2 rounds, which I think is a really great selling point for it. The other thing that was really nice about Disney Lorcana, apart from the fact that the mechanics were just quick and easy to dive into and have fun with, was the fact that the artwork was glorious.
Yeah.
Obviously, it has all of that classic Disney artwork based on films and TV shows and everything else in between. But it also then played around with things. Like, one of the nice things about the background to Lorcana is this idea that you're in this kind of reality where lots of different versions of different characters are coming together. So as you saw there was different versions of Mickey and all that kind of stuff popping up in the game. And they've really taken that and run with it. And there's a full-on storyline baked into the background of Lorcana where all these different alternative characters, maybe some villains that are potentially better and like good now, and some good characters are now villainous. They've all been thrown into the mix. And it's all done with this kind of obviously Disney flair, which I think is absolutely fantastic and nice to see on the tabletop. They had a immense release that came out when the game first launched last year. This was then followed up by an expansion, maybe only 2-3 months down the line, which is Rise of the Floodborn. And as we're moving into this year as well, and more of 2024, we've got another expansion coming up called Into the Inklands, which is going to be fantastic for people to dive into and have fun with. Again, continuing the story, throwing new mechanics into the game, as well as new characters and new movies and TV shows as well. And obviously the Disney world is vast, and what Disney own is also fairly vast. So you never know. Obviously, we've seen a lot of the iconic Disney characters showing up here, but maybe we'll start to see other realms brought into this mix as well, potentially.
Brace yourself, here comes Marvel.
Yeah, Marvel, Star Wars, everything else. Awesome.
Honestly, if they could just keep it narrowly focused on Disney,
as in the animated
as in the animation studio, I think it would be more interesting. And
I think that'd be cool.
Especially the fact that they're trying to develop a story as well. So the idea of having this branching storyline or the narrative happening within this world, but you've still got carte blanche within it to jump between Beauty and the Beast and Lilo and Stitch, or bring the mops in from Fantasia, bring in the apprentice in the form of a squirrel, bring in the little female squirrel that got Frey attached to. Squirrels.
Oh yes, sad squirrel.
Sad squirrel. There's an interrupt to play on your opponent.
Well,
that'll stop you.
For this being a gateway game, I mean, who doesn't know Disney?
Yeah, exactly.
Whenever you're right, if you're trying to introduce a non-gamer friend or family member to a game, the most recognizable thing you could ever use is Disney cartoons that everybody grew up on. And it's just like, look, I know you're not into my stuff, but I have one. It's Disney. I know you love Disney. How about we play this Disney game? So they're not thinking, oh, it's geeky card game. No, it's a Disney game. Yeah. So I think fantastic on that score.
The best thing about it is they're not going to spend the next 10 years doing live action remakes of it.
That's true.
Don't even. That's a rabbit hole we don't need to dive down.
But I will say, like, the art is the bit that grabs me when I see that, like seeing the Mickey from Fantasia as the Sorcerer's Apprentice and stuff in like a more modern art style that still has that old aesthetic to it is absolutely brilliant.
Sticking weirdly within the realm of the things that Disney own, there was another card game that came out last year that I think kind of flew under the radar, but is actually a really fun one that more people should be checking out. I mean, I know a lot of people have been drawn to another monolithic Star Wars card game that's coming out this year, but this one is Star Wars: The Deck Building Game. Which popped up last year and I think is definitely worth diving into to have a little bit of a look at. So it was previewed back in 2022, but then actually came out in 2023, sort of earlier in the year. And the idea of this one was that it was effectively a dueling game for 2 players. If you've played games in the past, like if anybody remembers the old Warhammer 40,000 Conquest card game, where you were battling over a series of cards in the middle of the table and you were fighting over different areas and things like that. This has kind of got a little bit of a feel to that game about it. But in this one, obviously, you're either taking on the forces of good or you're taking on the forces of evil, playing as the rebellion or playing as the dastardly empire. And what you'll be doing in the game is you'll be fighting over different cards in your deck and using them in order to take over planets that other players control. The fun thing that was really nice about this as well is that it kind of had a really fun mechanic in there where you had to think about sacrifices as well as what you were doing on the tabletop. So yes, you could use your abilities to try and bring more cards into your deck that you could then use later on in the game, but you then had to balance that against the attacking the different planets and trying to take them out at the same time. So it was a really interesting balancing act for the 2 players, and again plays into the idea of it being a duel. The other thing that was really cool is that they made a really fun use of the Force in the game. So the balance of the Force shifts from one side to the other. And as it does, it will benefit those who are playing with sort of like your Jedi or your Sith on the tabletop. And I think that's a really fun way to kind of involve the Force in your games without it being something that takes over completely or basically just feels like it's a nothing that's kind of tacked onto the side. They did a really nice job of blending it into the mechanics and using it alongside the other card game rules that they had in there as well, which I thought was a really fun little idea.
It's interesting that they've gone with the tug of war on the Force. I obviously we all know that by that stage the Force was pretty much in balance, with apparently only being 2 Jedi and 2 Sith left. But then we've consequently found out that wasn't the case, as 150,000 Jedi survived, hiding just about every corner of the galaxy. In every room of your house there's Jedi under the floorboards. But yeah, so I like the way they've involved that. Interesting to see where they go with it, because beyond the core set, I haven't seen anything else pop up for it yet. So whether
there's not been expansions or anything, but it could be something that pops up. I mean, obviously they've kind of got this feel of it sort of fitting into that kind of latter period of the rebellion against the Empire and things, but there's no reason why they couldn't take it into different periods of Star Wars history, maybe play around with it during the sort of prequel era or maybe the sequels, I suppose, as well, if you wanted to do that as well. I
just want to see the ship from Andor, the one that Stellan Skarsgård uses, has lightsabers out of each side as he spins his way through the galaxy. He's going, I'll just do that. You just be sitting there with that card in your deck every game going, now I'm going to spin through your ship.
I've defeated everything you have.
Please stop parrying my laser bolts from my Star Destroyer with your lightsaber ship. Darth Skarsgård.
Hey, he can do anything he likes. He's Skarsgård. So.
Well, that is true. That is very true. Okay, so those are our nominees. Who is our runner-up, Ben?
So the runner-up for Best Card Game of 2023 goes to Keyforge Winds of Exchange from Ghost Galaxy. Fantastic stuff. Really nice to see the game back on the tabletop and people having fun with it. Hopefully it goes from strength to strength as we move through the rest of this year and into the future.
Well done, Keyforge, for your runner-up, but you fell short.
You did.
I think we all knew in our heart of hearts what you fell short to.
The monolithic juggernaut that is Disney has rolled in from Ravensburger with Lorcana winning out as best card game of 2023. As we said, really great introduction to card games for families and obviously for adults, big kids as well.
Mm-hmm.
Gorgeous artwork, lots of fun expansions, really fun mechanics, and hope that things go again from strength to strength throughout the rest of this year and onwards as well as their universe expands.
I think the queue for it at UKGE last year started forming before they'd finished building the stand 2 days before the building opened. It was ridiculous, and I don't think
went out the door.
Yeah, it never went away. It was just there en masse.
Small pop-up tents everywhere.
At which point I'm going, what? What's that? What's going on?
What's a Lorcana?
Pretty much, because Ravensburger as a company famous for their board games and the like, and you expect that stand to be busy, but by God, that was absolutely rammed out. And I think
it really was.
And I think it shows just not only the IP behind the property, but the game itself, just how good it was. Because card gamers and board gamers can be a picky bunch, and they're not always just interested in the shiny things. You know, a shiny Charizard isn't always going to do the do. Look at me, down with the kids. Huh? But yes, congratulations, Ravensburger, for Disney Lorcana, the best card game of 2023. We have our next category coming up, the best gaming accessory of 2023. And this is a catch-all category that we threw things into because, let's face it, there's a lot of stuff we buy for Tiny Fighting Men's throughout the year, and it could quite happily be best terrain, or could drop into, you know, miniatures game or indie or whatever. But sometimes we just go, well, maybe we'll pop that one into best gaming accessory. Something that you don't always have to have. It's nice to have it though. And there were some interesting bits and pieces that came through last year from a whole host of companies. And our first nomination is P-Work Wargames for their Wargames RPG tokens.
Yeah.
Of which there's a lot.
Yes.
So these are essentially, I suppose, you know, it's another form of standee. An awful lot of people out there use miniatures correctly for their RPGs. But maybe they don't have a massive collection, or maybe they don't want a massive collection, especially when it comes to things like monsters, minions that you might not see the whole time on the tabletop. So being able to pick up a range of just silhouetted standees to drop in to use as bands of outlaws. Maybe they're only going to come up in a game once in a blue moon. Once every couple of years, you're going to run into some nefarious band. I think when you've got models, I'm not saying you're more likely to use them over and over again because you've got them. But being able to just grab a set means you're not shoehorning them into every adventure because they can be easily stored away, as they are flat packable as well, which is one of the reasons why I absolutely adore the use of standees just in general, just the convenience of packing things away.
Yep.
But beyond that, the extent of which they've gone to at P-Works to, I mean, pretty much come up with everything. That's a particularly handy one, because that's when you're sitting down and somebody's rolling some sort of druid or, you know, fiend, and they go, oh, yeah, I've got an animal friend, and you're going, okay, sure, have you got a wolf? Because everybody has wolves, they're always wolves. And they go, no, I've got a polecat. You're going, really? Is that what you have? Sure. Do I have a miniature of that? No.
Yeah, they transform into a stoat.
Exactly, yeah.
Foxy, Stoaty, Stoat. But yeah, they've put together just a whole host of MDF tokens, which are just really, really good to have to hand. And I mean, they go beyond the RPG. So if you're playing board games or skirmish games, that sort of thing, and you need to drop in, especially for a lot of the generic games that are out there these days, the likes of your Stargraves, Frostgraves, Rangers of Shadow Deep, things like that, where maybe there's a big table's worth of, you know, you are
wandering monster
encounter table, you're suddenly attacked by 15 kraken, and you're going, how did you get on shore? Can I just stay far enough away till it dies? Are they water breathers? You know, but you know, not having a ton of miniatures to hand can sometimes mean that those adventures become repetitive. Being able to substitute in tokens is always good, because it just means you've got so much more that you can play around with without breaking the bank or having to fill up 15-figure cases.
Well, not to mention if painting miniatures is just not your hobby.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
You know, you're not having to like do the gaming sweatshop of having all your friends paint you miniatures.
Yeah, you're the struggling DM, but also you have to paint all the monsters and the miniatures and the train and everything else in between. The thing that I really like about them is that, as you're saying, like you can just use them out of the box. Like there's no reason you have to paint these. You can just use them, stick them onto the tabletop, and just have at it. Because of the way that they've been done, because obviously they're laser cut from the wood, alongside things like the map tiles and things that P-Work already do as well for Dungeon Delves. I think you've got a really nice set of stuff that kind of has that map aesthetic to it.
Yeah.
So it looks like a kind of tea-stained dungeon layout already without you having to do any painting. And obviously you could have at it and paint them if you wanted to, but I think it'd just be really nice to see that on tabletop and have fun with it. And it covers so many different ideas. So.
I would go in with a biro and just put smiley faces on everything. Just so I can tell what way's forward.
For me, I would just color prime everything.
Yeah, you could do that as well. That would be a nice way to do it. Or maybe even just put numbers on some of the basing as well if you needed to use it for larger combats and that kind of thing. But
this is Goblin number 5.
Exactly.
I swear he's not wearing a red shirt.
Poor goblins. Their only crime was being attacked by murder hobos when they were in their own home.
Yes. Yeah. I'm cooking here.
Our next nomination is a bit out of left field, but it was the first, and as far as I'm concerned, the biggest of these to come hoving into view in the last year. And this is published by Warlord Games, but not technically Warlord Games. This is the Talking Miniatures book by Robin and John. And this was a 2-volume in lovely slipcase, if you got one.
I had a lot to say.
Yeah. Essentially, the birth of Games Workshop during that rosy red period. So how it became universally known, how it became the sort of dominant force in the industry, and how the red period, as we used to call it, developed. So after Ian and Steve left the building, that sort of development of the company through the early 90s and all of the big featured games, the big names who joined the company, whether it was for sculpting, the likes of Jez Goodwin, or the sort of artwork that was being done by a whole host of incredibly talented people, from the likes of John Blanche and Gallagher and others, and then the sculptors who came in. Everyone got a sort of nostalgia trip as John and Robin either visited them with a tape recorder, or I think as the event started to kick in, then that had to be changed back to Zoom calls with people. But it's a fascinating insight into the people behind the company. I think a lot of times you look at, especially Games Workshop, which distorts reality around it. You often see it as the logo and the miniatures they produce, but seeing how these people interacted, how they came together, the way the company grew and changed and shaped, and having people who started off in the mailroom ending up writing either rule sets or developing the background narrative. It's a fascinating talk to these sort of stalwarts of the industry. Rick Priestley especially, I think, was a great one. I have the book. It's in next door, so you can't see it. It's mine. And if people were very lucky and got in early enough, they could get signed versions as well.
They could, yeah.
At the super early, people got a ton. I think everybody signed it. But yeah, it's amazing to see where Games Workshop has come from, and to never forget just how important they've been to certainly the gaming scene in the UK, but worldwide. These were the people who created more or less our hobby for the majority of people who play games today. So yeah,
And some of the unsung heroes as well. Like the book doesn't just talk to the big names; it talks to some of the people that were just working there, making sure the staff had a good time and were paid, and everything else in between, and organizing everybody and making sure that the cats were herded and all that kind of thing. So, yeah, it was a phenomenal look at the sort of early years of Games Workshop, and it was really fun having the chat with them as well, doing the interview. It's great. So,
it actually takes one of my favorite parts of working here and turns it into a book. Because anytime anybody visits us, and you get to hear all the old stories about doing this with that person, that with that person, those are my favorite parts of the industry, is hearing those little snippets that you maybe should really know about, but you're never going to find out unless you get a chance to actually meet the person and sit down and have a pint with them.
Yeah. And so that kind of turned it into a reality for a lot of people in those books, which is really nice. So I'm sure there'll be, well, I say this, I'm sure there'll be a volume 3 if they get around to it, I guess. But yeah.
Well, I mean, some of the people they couldn't interview because they were still working with Games Workshop. So I think Jervis Johnson was still there at that stage, and John Blanche was still there at that stage.
Yeah. He's obviously got his own book.
He's got his own book, which has come out subsequently. Unfortunately, some people have now passed away. So the likes of Brian passed. And I think that shows also the age of both the company and the people who created the industry, because, you know, a lot of people, like I say, you see the company, you don't see the faces behind it.
Exactly.
And so it may be, this is the last snapshot of that era, that generation. So maybe the next time we see a book like this, it won't be the names who helped create my Games Workshop, but it may be the ones who are creating the current Games Workshop. So we'll find out
the
down
next
the line.
generation.
We have a final nomination, and this one I thought would amuse John.
Yes,
and Justin.
So this one kind of snuck in a little bit towards the end of last year, and I think it's still very much under the radar when it comes to the whole 3D printing side of things. A new formulation of resin that was popularized towards the end of last year by a lot of YouTubers and sort of came out as well. I think mainly through Fohammer's work on it as well. And this is the Wargame resin. So this one's very interesting. So the idea behind it is that it is a high quality resin that allows you to create the miniatures in the same style as you would get from the likes of Games Workshop. So the finished article is, as you can see there, very much in line with that kind of dark grey plastic that you would have found from Games Workshop sprues and everything else in between. Now, as I said, this is, like, as they've put it, quite a high quality version of this resin. So it is expensive. And so that's why one of the reasons why it's maybe not necessarily come up as part of a lot of people's collections, or maybe used very heavily in sort of other people's 3D printing and stuff like that. But the fact that this sort of came out, I think, was really interesting, and it was fascinating seeing how it worked and how it came to life and the development of it, and sort of seeing lots of people using it and playing around with it as part of their collections and stuff. And the finished quality from a lot of different people who've been playing around with it has been pretty fascinating. I think the proof of this is going to be as we sort of move into the rest of this year and how they come back to it and sort of develop the formula in different ways. I know that it sold out like hotcakes towards the end of last year, and a lot of people picked it up and had a lot of fun with it and were creating all sorts of different things. But as we move into the rest of this year, I know that they've said they're going to be moving around and sort of playing around with the formula and bringing it back to the tabletop for people to play around with, but also potentially working on a way to make it a little bit cheaper for people to have fun with as well, which I think is quite fun. But yeah, as a lot of people look at 3D printing and sort of sit down and think, oh, this looks nice, but it doesn't quite look like the other models that I've got sitting on my tabletop. Having a formulation of resin out there that people can look at and be like, so this actually allows me to get that kind of quality of stuff. That's great. Obviously, there's still the whole learning curve of diving into 3D printing to get your head around, which will make it will
just make put the USB stick in, hit play. Is that right, John?
That's clear. That's how John makes it work. Yeah. So John's the messiah about this. But yeah, it's obviously there's all that learning to be done about it, but it's really nice to see a product out there that is specifically designed to be like, this is the kind of model you want to make. Here's a version of that for you to play around with and have fun with.
Well, I think that's key. It's not brand new technology. It's just somebody has went, what do wargamers want? They want a resin that's durable, that takes detail, and ideally water washable, water soluble. So you're not playing around with solvents. And that's what they've gone for, because there are probably resin formulations out there that give higher quality prints depending on your printer, but they're designed to be sat somewhere, not touched. Or they're designed to be, the likes of 3D prototypes, they're generally cast, but they're not particularly durable because they're made to be put into a mold, and then you make your mold becomes your castings after that. This doesn't do that. This goes, no, you're going to be handling and playing with these models. They're going to be subject to more abuse than the highly detailed stuff goes. So you see this more and more within certainly within our industry, where companies are reaching out, whether it's manufacturers reaching out to painters, going, "What are you looking for in a paint range? How should it work? What colors? What hues? Blah blah blah." Here's somebody's going, well, there's a group as a hobby niche have jumped on board 3D printing massively. Why are we not asking them? And I imagine while 3D printing is obviously bigger than just our wargaming hobby, we, as a subset, we must be one of the biggest subsets, because you don't see a huge amount of people going, I'm really enjoying 3D printing because I make a lot of tea tree holders for my candles. I don't know who else is out there using it beyond the Etsy crowd.
Bionic limbs.
I think the important part of it is that other industries look at wargaming and they iterate on what exists to fit the niche, rather than, as we said, it's not, resin isn't new technology now, but the wargamer stuff is giving the wargamers that, or the tabletop guys, that little iteration that's more suited to the purposes of what we have or what we do. Because we go through a lot of resin in here. Like, we blast through it.
John goes through a lot of resin.
Yeah, sometimes it feels like that. But the main features of the resin, the fact that you're able to do it relatively quickly, it's relatively strong, but the problem is if it falls off a shelf, it's done. And having something that's a little bit tougher, and that is going to be, or is, a very vital aspect of it for the hobby industry. So I like that it's not new. I like that it's an iteration of something that already exists that fits our niche a little bit better.
Yeah, there is one aspect to this that I do like that they've considered, even though it's like a little tiny little detail. But whenever you've actually printed with this resin, it looks like the feel and finish is very close to what you're getting off the sprue. So the color and the actual light refraction that comes off it, it looks more like hard plastic. So you can actually see better what you're doing.
I actually think it's more how dare you tell me that's a 3D print because the shade of gray is slightly different. You want to put it up. You want to print something and put it next to something that was a plastic kit and go, tell me the difference.
Yeah.
It's the same picture.
You too could go to Warhammer World and put one of these miniatures unpainted next to one of their official ones and go, well, clearly you made it. It looks the same.
Maybe Games Workshop's prototyping department bought out all the Wargamer resin for their...
Maybe that's what it was, yeah.
Their prototypes,
You can tell how few finished miniatures we have when the color of the resin matching plastic that's been unpainted and unprimed is an important thing.
It has to match.
Right. So those are nominations. And our runner-up for 2023 is the P-Work Wargames RPG tokens. Little silhouette into your life. Fill a bucket of Kraken and set yourself off. Well done, you P-Works, for being the runner-up. But there can be only one winner. And we've talked a bit about it. It is the Talking Miniatures book. And just as a snap of life in Games Workshop, it was absolutely fantastic. Do you need it on your tabletop? No. Is it great to have if you are a gamer? Yes. It just opens up that whole world, and the insights, the stories, and the chat between friends, essentially, and / workmates. It was just fantastic. And I do recommend, if you are interested in not just the company, but the people behind the company. Like so many things, when you're making history, you don't really realize you're making history at that time. It's only in hindsight looking back and going, well, wow, that was changing the industry. For better or worse, you can make your own decisions on that one. But the red period of GW has always been a firm favorite, and the Talking Miniatures book is an absolute cracker. That is enough of that. We are going to move on to our next category, and for that, we require a new member. Begone, John, fetch us a shay. Welcome, Shay. Welcome to the awards for 2023, where we get to look back over how all of these things affected you in the last year. Unfortunately, Undaunted Stalingrad is not in there, which affected you a lot. It affected me. I've still got PTSD.
Right in the feels.
But we are going to be starting off this little segment with the best board game of 2023. So, Ben, who are our nominees?
So we're going to be starting off the nominations with one that I think is a little bit of a sleeper hit for us, and should be a sleeper hit for you as well. More people should be playing this game. So this comes from Raybox Games, and this is Escape from Stalingrad Z. See, there is something Stalingrad in here. Yay! So this one comes from Raybox Games, and it is one of their Paths Unknown games. They've done fantastic stuff in the past in this sort of world and with these mechanics as well. But the real selling point of these is that they are a little bit choose your own adventure, a little bit standard dungeon crawl, a little bit miniatures game, all sort of baked into one. And the focus of these games is that you sort of dive down into this scenario book that you unfold and you play through a mission, and then that leads you into a decision at the end of it where you have to be like, right, do we go this direction or do we go this one? And then as you go through, you'll start to uncover a larger story and a full campaign where your characters will dive deeper and deeper into it. Obviously, in the case of Escape from Stalingrad Z, this one is very much World War II weird and wacky zombie destroying action, which is always cool to see. But it also comes with a really fun sort of baked in narrative and story that sort of takes you off in different directions and sort of allows you to play out different campaigns each time you can sit down to play actually as well, which is quite nice. Yeah. So there's a little bit of replay value baked into there as well, which I think is really good. Another one of the nice selling points of the game is that it's just so quick and easy to set up. Like a lot of campaign games, some of which we'll talk about in this category, are monoliths that take you about 15 minutes to just set up to start playing the game. With Escape from Stalingrad Z and the rest of their Paths Unknown games, you literally just open the book, put the models on, and away you go, which I think is fantastic. And everything you need to know about that particular scenario is baked into those couple of pages that you're playing your games out on, which I think is really good. Twin that in with really fun and interesting mechanics at the same time, and you've got the makings of a fantastic series of adventures for you to dive into, not just in Stalingrad Z, but also they've done Norse stuff and all sorts of different things. And there's even more fun things happening this year as well. It may involve cats. It does involve cats.
I saw Jerry post that one.
The idea behind it is you can just play out essentially a whole narrative game from a book, and you don't need to use the models.
No,
there are standees.
Yeah.
I've seen people in the group have posted pictures of them playing it on trains with friends, or playing it on, or even one person had got it all on their little in-flight tray on a plane for a long-haul flight, and it was just like, just start playing through this. Don't bother with any, use the top-down counters, don't even bother with the standees. You can just, it plays that tightly, that neatly.
One time you want to be in the middle seat on an airplane.
Yeah. And the innovation of the book and the mechanics behind it means that you can build up a whole slew of them. You can have your, not just one book, one campaign, but then that becomes part of a more substantial storyline, which is what they're doing with the World War II stuff. So going off to the German lab in the mountains, or heading off to North Africa for some sort of Egyptian mummy fighting things. But then at the same time, the way is clearly open for them to dive into other bits and pieces. But as the original Escape from Stalingrad Z is right up there. And absolutely cracking game from 2023. Who is our next nomination?
So our next nomination is a little bit more of a traditional style board game. So this one comes from Studio Midhall, and this is Beast. So Beast landed on Kickstarter in 2022, and it was a massive success. Absolutely, loads of people loved it, and then came to retail in 2023. The focus of the game is that it's a little bit of a asymmetrical one versus many affair, which already gets a lot of sort of like, ooh, hairs on the back of the neck tingling. Lovely. I love these kind of games anyway. They're fantastic fun. They're great for narrative and storytelling and creating cool water cooler moments at the table, which is always a nice thing for a board game. But in this one player will take on the role of the beast, whichever it might be, like Hogbad. Is he bad? Probably. It's in the name. And they will have their own set of mechanics and their own deck of cards that they'll be able to use to hunt down different characters and stuff on the tabletop. The other players at the table will be taking on the role of hunters, who will be exploring the wilderness, trying to stop the beast from doing all of its dastardly deeds and trying to bring it down. So this means that you've got a really nice setup from the very beginning. It's enhanced by the amazing artwork and the fact that you have lots of different styles of beasts that you can start playing around with as well. So there's lots of different ways for you to come back each time and kind of like provide an extra challenge for everybody. Because of then having loads of different hunters at the same time, there's different ways that you can build your teams to try and take down the beast, which I think is a really cool way of playing things. And so they've really gone to town on sort of building on this kind of hidden movement and asymmetrical style gameplay, but doing it in a different way than we've normally seen. A lot of people will be very familiar with like hidden movement games like Whitechapel and stuff, where one player's taking on the role of Jack the Ripper. Or maybe back in the day, you played the Scotland Yard game, which is very, very similar indeed. But this one sort of took things in a new direction, played around with really nice artwork at the same time, lots of replay value, fun and interesting mechanics, and also asking interesting questions and building story as you play through, because there's lots of elements in there about like, is the beast really bad or is it just working as nature intended? It's meant to destroy things. Maybe there's some kind of balance.
No, it's affecting humanity, so that's bad. We
know what side you come down on. Justin is a hunter. There we go.
It's only affecting humanity when humans go marching into the forest to find it's dead and then attack it.
The other thing that's really The other thing that's really cool about it as well is that it's very much a kind of you must work together kind of game.
Yeah.
If you go off on your own to try and hunt down the beast, you are not going to make it. So it's all about really having to work as a team. And then that other player at the table cackling and doing the Mr. Burns fingers.
We have a final nomination.
We do.
And who's this little indie one I've never heard of?
Yeah, so this one's very small, actually.
Compact Bijou.
Yeah, so this one comes from Cephalofair Games, who obviously created the monolithic board game that was Gloomhaven, and then took to Kickstarter with Frosthaven, which finally came to retail in 2023 for people to come and pick up. And it's pretty easy to see why this game pops up in the list. It does all of the things that Gloomhaven did well, but better.
And it is humongous, gigantinormous.
It is absolutely huge. Carrying it around requires a car. So there we go. That's how I've had to deal with it over the last year or so playing the game. It is a titan in more ways than one. They did amazing things with the updates to the mechanics and the way that the different classes play. I thought that they would have run out of ideas for how heroes work after Gloomhaven and then Jaws of the Lion. But with Frosthaven, they sort of dove back in and came up with some amazing characters. I mean, the original sort of set that you can play as are so incredibly unique and different. There's like a Tracer style Overwatch called Blinkblade, who's amazing. There's one character that is effectively two characters, and you have two decks of cards that you have to manage as you're playing the game, and you have to flip between different styles of actions. There's my character, the Drifter, who's badass, and everyone should be him because he's cool. And then there's things like the Bone Shaper, who can raise up the dead and is like a necromancer and all sorts of different things in there, which is fantastic. Added to that, they also threw in an entirely new level of gameplay. So rather than it just being you play your adventures, you come back to town, you upgrade, you go back out and play new adventures. In Frosthaven, there's an entire new town mechanic built into the game where you have to build up the town around you, defend it from attacks, build buildings, craft your armor and your items, brew potions, everything else in between. It's so much more game than the original Gloomhaven, and done in a really great way. It's hard to distill your thoughts down into a summary of the game. So if you are interested, there is a review of Frosthaven over on Tabletop, so you can go and check that out and see what I actually think of the game and all that kind of thing and the mechanics and stuff. But yeah, Isaac Childress and his team of both core designers and guest designers have done an amazing job. And so far, They've not created a scenario where you get continually attacked by oozes and you give up after 4 hours. So I'm just happy about that, which is nice to see.
Why am I sensing PTSD?
Yes, I still dream of dropping oozes from trees. That scenario is so bad. Anyway.
I like the innovation of the fortified camp / city that you're building up as well, where it's not just Frosthaven is Gloomhaven, but with furs on and ice.
Yeah,
there's something more intricate and interesting to do with your time, but without it bloating the mechanics of the game so much that it delays or feels like it's been tacked on and stagnates alongside it. You've still got that interesting entwining, I suppose, of the exploration followed by the fortification and the redoubt being built as well.
Well, your city building adds a bit more to it, like a bit more worth to that, like management side of the game, where you actually feel like there are consequences to choosing to build the blacksmiths or the stables first. Which of these is going to help us more for the next time we're heading out?
Yeah, and it does feed directly into gameplay as well. It's not just a case of, the blacksmith will just give me more weapons. It will lead into story beats that will happen later on down the line. It will lead into characters being unlocked and all sorts of different things. It's also, and this is actually something you reminded me of just then, is like when I played Gloomhaven, I sat down and played it, and by about 2/3 of the way through, I'd forgotten why we were adventuring and who the bad guy was. In Frosthaven, because you have that central care of the area that you're fighting for and the characters that are built up around that, I still know what's happening in the storyline, which is great after a year. So
wow,
fantastic. Yeah, and there's still more to go. I'm sure we're not going to be done for at least another 2. So there we go.
Wow,
happy
that's some heavy duty game.
All right, well, those are nominations, and who are our winners?
So the runner-up goes to the absolutely fantastic Escape from Stalingrad Z from the folks at Raybox Games. You have done an amazing job with this. It is definitely a game that you need to go and check out if you've not seen it before. As I say,
bring it up.
It's kind of just gone through the gone under the radar for a lot of people, and it's something you desperately need to go and play. It is really fun. They were at UK Games Expo last year, and hopefully they're going to be there this year as well, showing off their new games, Cats, and amazing stuff there. So yeah, go and check out those guys and see what you think of that one. So yes, fantastic stuff there for Escape from Stalingrad Z. But the winner, has to be, doesn't it, really? The winner of Best Board Game of 2023 is Frosthaven. Yes, Isaac Childress, you've done it again. Amazing work. Who would have thought you could improve upon the perfection of board games? But you have. Fantastic stuff. And we can't wait to see what you do with all your other games in the future as well. Gloomhaven 2nd Edition's coming. Maybe that'll win.
I can see just a band disappearing into the distance at Expo if they have a copy of it this year at Expo.
Yeah.
Take my money.
I think
you just see him. Okay, here's my kidney.
Yeah.
I think the key there is really make sure that all the oozes are frozen.
Yes.
If they can't drop in your head, then your gameplay is just so much
or on fire.
Please.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
Oh, you don't want to set fire to an ooze. Oh, you don't want a flaming ooze coming at you.
Oh,
Jesus.
No.
Oh, man. Oh, we've all seen how the blob ends.
Instant regret. I regret life choices.
Yeah, it's all about freezing them up. But yeah, Cephalofair and Raybox, congrats, you, well done. Absolutely brilliant examples of what can be done and how differently it can be done within the board game industry as well. A big one now. It is the best miniatures game for 2023. And Lordy, there are an amazing amount of miniatures games that come out. Everybody does a miniatures game. You may think you haven't done a miniatures game, but you should just go and check in the bottom of a cupboard that you've not been near in a while. You've probably designed a miniatures game. It's probably in there. They come thick and fast, and we love them all to various extents. And for our first nomination for 2023's Best Miniatures Game, we have The Doomed from Osprey Games. And this apocalyptic horror hunting was an interesting little exploration of a dying world. And how dying is it? Well, it's been doomed by all of the major sins / demonic forces. It's difficult to explain. There's just so much of them and they're all terrible. But the whole idea of the Doomed is you put together your warband based around the stuff you want to play. So the Doomed is very much for kit bashers and miniature collectors of the esoteric and strange all alike. It is a world that is high science fiction with aliens that is collapsing to some sort of broken down medieval peasantry, and you can play everything throughout those. You can be mutated, you could be botted up cybernetics, you can be strange bug aliens, you can be anything and so much more. But the real stars of the show in the Doomed are the monsters. And really, it's a bizarre mix of whatever you can think of. If you've ever, watched a Stephen King film or read a Brian Lumley book or anything like that, and then your imagination starts going, well, these are all bizarre, insane, and twisted. Where could they possibly come from? This is the sort of thing you should be tapping into for the Doomed. You are facing a horror, and a horror has some form of venomous attack, and it has meat puppets or a biomechanical monstrosity based on wrath is coming after you, and how you interpret those few simple sentences and stat line is how you can build kit bash or play the monsters out on the tabletop. And it can be done a couple of different ways. You can do your standard PvP, or you can go solo or cooperative. I will say playing PvP in the months a whole host of nefarious creatures is tricky at best, and sometimes deadly for all concerned. And I really love how that sort of grew up and expanded around it. And the fact that mechanically within each of the monsters that you're having to deal with in your poor doomed planet with your poor doomed people changes each time, and the artifacts that you have to destroy to banish the creature from this reality again are constantly shifting, moving. Sometimes they're just a repulsive pile of meat that they go back to snack on. Sometimes they can be minions in and of themselves that crawl around the board or attack you, and you never quite know what you're going to get. And as you play through, you can generate your own stories for your gang and your opponent's gang of what you've had to go through to well, nobody survives the Doomed, but I suppose in some respects dying last is good.
You endure.
You endure.
Well, I mean, one of the most interesting aspects whenever I was watching you and Shay play was, yes, you had two gangs who are fighting against each other, but it's not just you against each other. It's the monster itself does feel like it is just hammering you back into the radioactive earth from whence you came.
Yeah.
And then it's that nice balance of you guys going, do I hit him and stop him getting the objective, which I kind of need to. But if I do that, is the monster then going to come after me? So should I maybe try and take the monster out so that it's not going to come after me, it's going to come after him? And you have a really weird balance on your threat assessment, which I really enjoyed watching.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
It's absolute filth. And and more power to your elbow on that one as well. I just, there's so many. The term miniatures agnostic gets bandied around a lot. To be fair, every game is miniature agnostic. But this in particular lends itself to kit bashers and
so it's more miniatures imaginative.
Yeah, because you come up with your theme for your own little merry band of delinquents, and then try and find the best way to pop them onto the tabletop. And it can be a case of dragging out some knights and then equipping them with shotguns, or you could go down the line of 3D printing or what have you. But the whole way through both the game and the book itself, it's just brimming full of really inspirational artwork and really fantastic looking miniatures as well. Been sculpted by Anna. And yeah, it's interesting little nomination. Disturbing little game to play.
That's the point.
Shay still has PTSD of playing
I
it.
do. I was just about to say that. I still remember every waking horror. That is awful.
That's a good thing for a game to instill in you.
So very many of them. Our next nomination is from Black Site Studios, and it is Hamitsu. And this is Black Site moving away from the fantasy and science fiction and exploring instead the mythological world of a sort of feudal Japan. And the work that they've done on this has been absolutely gorgeous, from the rulebook itself for your monster hunters to go exploring in, which is absolutely brimming full of gorgeous illustrations and fantastic, evocative stories. But alongside that, they've put together a stunning range of miniatures. And I don't know if anybody's seen the absolute classic movie that came out, Mortal Kombat. But that bit at the start where the ninjas are attacking the samurai who's trying to defend his wife and kid. That the whole movie should have been that, and this allows you to do that. You have your groups of Ronin or samurai or whoever it happens to be, and then you have to get out there and deal with the
demonic forces
from ancient Japan, and the renderings of these are absolutely stunning as well.
They really are.
I'm a big fan of things like Big Trouble in Little China has a lot to answer for. And yes, I know China, not Japan, but the Three Thunders, when they come out wearing their massive wicker basket hats and then just completely attack everybody in their path. And that's the sort of Oriental Eastern mythology that we don't see enough of on the tabletop. And it's great that Blackside Studios have really sort of jumped in there and went, you know what, we can do all of that and so much more. Did you know they've got strange vampiric heads? They're just heads with spines and then all the organs, and they float towards you, and you're going, no, I didn't. And that explains an awful lot about their culture.
See, there's an old cult classic Ninja Scroll. It's an old anime. That's just the vibe this is firing out to me.
There you go. I think the thing that's really nice about Himetsu is that it falls into the category of other games that Blackside Studios have done, where we're going to make this really interesting and evocative set of game mechanics and also miniatures range to go alongside it, but you don't then have to play it out on a huge 6x4 table or whatever. You play it on a little tiny 3x3 whatever tabletop, and you just sort of pack that with miniatures and have fun with it. The game mechanics themselves are really interesting in the way that they tell a story as well. So as Jerry was saying, you take on the role of these warriors, these demon hunters, based on cool samurai aesthetics and ideas and mythological creatures and characters. And you get to the tabletop and you start out having to try and hunt down where the demon is and sort of taking out its minions. So you start almost in stealth, kind of like Tenchu kind of feel if you're thinking about sort of like old video games. And then as you go through, the alarm starts to raise, and as you take out more demons, eventually the big bad, the boss, will rip through reality and sort of work its way into the real world, our world. And then the samurai are going to have to try and take that down and sort of destroy it and stuff. And so there's lots of different bosses that you can encounter, a little bit like a video game in that respect, where you start to sort of like explore different levels, as it were. So like, this time I'm going to pick up this particular set, which will come with this boss and these minions, and then maybe next time as a group we go and buy this boss and these minions and we fight through this new campaign. Talking of campaigns, there's also a campaign mode built into the main rulebook, but they're also going to be bringing out more and more as the game starts to expand. So there's different ways for you to kind of upgrade and enhance your demon hunters. So you might start off as like a regular demon hunting samurai, but as you go through, you might unlock new skills and abilities and new weapons and everything else well at the same time. And it really just feeds into the idea of fun narrative wargaming experiences at the tabletop that Blacksite are known for with their other games. So, and done in a very stylistic way, which is always good.
The bespoke figures for it,
they're gorgeous,
are really, really nice. But beyond that, I mean, if you've already got something out there, if you've already got feudal Japanese for whatever reason, then you just need
like
to
the Zenit range, for example.
Then you can explore a different way of playing with those miniatures. Or if you've got an actual full-on historic army, then you can go, well, I just need to pick up some unusual beasts to start inflicting on my fellow man. And it's always good, clean family fun. So we enjoy that a lot. Right, we have a final nominee, and that is a big name in the industry. Atomic Mass Games and Star Wars Shatterpoint. This came massively last year, not just in scale, but also in scope, I suppose is the best way to put it. So with Shatterpoint, the idea is you are playing heroes and their entourage, I will say, because even though you can play a faction-based game, you can put together the people who should be together on the tabletop based on various Star Wars IP, whether it's the cartoons or the TV shows or the films. At the same time, there is a deck building elephant in the room where you can go, you know who would work really well with Baron Dooku, Ahsoka. Oh, her skills with his skills would be absolutely ridiculous. And so to that end, I will, do that. And then I'll just throw a load of Ewoks in because they're good chaff.
Just you're standing at one side of the table screaming, yum yum.
Could be that. It's an interesting game for those reasons. If you're not worried too much about the narrative, but you're looking for the epic encounters and the deck/list building, if you're into that meta, then you can really go completely left field with what gets put into your force, because there are all those little intricate plays between various characters and the troopers that they bring with. It also has a very dynamic mechanic for both scoring and actually how the game plays out. So the big heroes have almost like little flow charts where if you complete A, then you can do B, and you can combo like playing an arcade game and put together extravagant combo moves to batter the living bejesus out of the opposing heroes, while at the same time you have various sort of grades of dunger en masse. So we've seen with the likes of the clone troopers here, they're all individuals, but for some of the others, there might be multi-based. So the battle droids, you get 3 on a base, the Ewoks are 3 or 4 on a base, because they have a sliding scale of quality, shall we say. So the combination of the heroes fighting the Duel of the Fate style dramatic fight, while at the same time your squad members, your little groups of minions are running around trying to capture specific objective points before they either switch off or disappear somewhere else, means that you don't have a static battlefield. And so it's all about the close control, tight in, dynamic action. Everything's shifting, everything's always moving. And the figures themselves that Atomic Mass have put together for the game are absolutely stonking.
They're lovely. Yeah.
They've used the bigger scale to allow them to do proportions correctly. Let's put it like that. No ham fists and massive pumpkin heads, because everything's upscaled. It means that you can actually put the detail in and not have to worry about oversizing pieces to make them look like the actors or cartoons or whatever they happen to be based on. So it's been an interesting start from them as they've pushed through and sort of jumped around with gay abandon throughout the Star Wars
what should we
canon.
make this time?
yeah. Because they're not having to worry about building an army. They're not having to go, well, we need to have a full army's worth of stuff like in Legion. You don't need to have a full Stormtrooper army with scout troopers and Vader leading them and blah, 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 blah. You don't have to worry about doing all of this in one go because people only need a handful of models.
Yeah.
Therefore, we can do Thrawn this week and his Death Troopers from the Bale and Skull show, and the following week they could maybe pop back and do something from the Ridge Tridge, as the kids call it, throw in some Wookiees or whatever.
I think one of the big things about it is what you mentioned earlier, is the idea of it kind of being what if, a little bit sort of Saturday morning cartoon vibe to it. So it's all sort of high octane action, but then feeding into the that sort of action figure idea that a lot of people had when they were younger, where it was like, yeah, but what if we do Obi-Wan, but he beats Darth Vader, and you play that out on the tabletop and have fun with it and sort of mashing your toys together. Although don't do that with your miniatures. Please don't do that with your miniatures. Unless you varnish them, of course, maybe. But yeah, but it also means that from a hobby point of view, people have approached the game in a really different way. Like I've seen people diving into Legion and they very much paint up the characters as they kind of were, and they build the armies as they would have been during that period. But with Shatterpoint, I think people have felt a lot more open to the idea of doing alternative ideas for things. So sort of like, what if Anakin had not turned to the dark side? What if Ahsoka had been the one that had gone to the dark side, and all that kind of thing? Or playing around with lots of different characters and sort of building them in different ways, painting them in different ways as well.
allows you to throw things out there like the Night Sisters from the cartoons, and then maybe have them alongside Ventress, as if she hadn't died that time. Anakin battered her to death on Yavin 4 and kicked her off a Sith temple where she definitely 100% died. But what if she hadn't died? There she is with Ahsoka now.
What if?
Yeah. There she is with Ahsoka against Anakin and Darth Vader at the same time. Combos. So yes, those are our nominees for Best Miniatures Game of 2023. And our runner-up is Hamitsu from Blackside Studios. It's just too much feudal Japanese monster hunting goodness not to have it in there.
Can't ignore it.
Can't ignore it.
Can't get away from it.
You might want to, but we'll follow you down and we'll push some severed heads with the spinal column and all the organs still attached through your letterbox. And that'll be you. That'll teach you. But it's only the runner-up. We have a winner. And our winner is, of course, The Doomed.
Yay.
From Osprey Games.
We had a lot of fun with this one. I say fun.
Yeah. It's just a barrel of laughs. And you can play it on hard mode like me and Shay did. Or you can make life easier for yourself by following the rules correctly. We moved the Doomed things far too often. But it was much more interesting.
It was.
And by interesting, I mean seat of the pants,
horrifying and pressurized.
Terrifying, yeah.
But I just any game that has that much leeway for the world, it really is one that you can make your own with your friends and make the gangs just so bespoke to you in whatever way you choose to do that. I just love that. I love the resurgence of kit bashing and the like. And this was a massive at the start of 2023. Everybody and their dog was talking about this, and hopefully they're still playing it. Sometimes there's an awful lot of talk at the start, and then people sort of drift away from it. But it's such an interesting concept, and dying worlds need love and attention too.
They do. Yeah.
Right. That is enough of these categories. I think we shall return the Brothers Johnston and finish off the show. All right, folks, we are back to wrap up the awards for another year, and the A team's back on the case. We've had the B team, we've had the C team.
Yeah.
I'll let you choose which of the previous teams was B and C. You can order them yourself. It'll be your own personal award ceremony.
Go on, cheap.
Rank us all. We're a bunch of rankers. Right.
We'll swap them for a bottle of fresh milk for the studio. No more coffees for them silly little UHT milks.
I don't even think you can legally call it milk. Right. So we have two, and we've saved the best to last to get through. And our penultimate category for 2023 is the bestie. We are all so glad that microphone does that.
Yeah, I think it's Indie of the Week, isn't it?
It is, as you say, Indie of the Week for 2023. These are never easy to whittle down. They're never easy for me to pick, to be brutally honest. Every now and again, I let other people pick, or I go off on a holiday and they do things behind my back. But generally,
I picked something that we've done before, just so I can talk about it again.
But generally, these are coming via the medium of my bookmark folder, which is a ridiculously big bookmark folder listed as indies.
That says, "What has Jerry not bought yet?"
You know what? I can only imagine what that would look like in Jerry's ideal world, where it's not a bookmark folder. It'd be a little Rolodex of index cards.
Oh, wouldn't that be amazing?
It would be like do you know the start of Ghostbusters with all the wee drawers with all the wee cards?
Oh, card index.
Oh, yes.
I could get If I could get a card index for my indies, that would make me the happiest cherry in all the land. Right. We have had close to 50 last year. Obviously, there's a few weeks where we're not around Christmas or when we're off doing things. It's places like Salute UKG, which in themselves are massively full of indies anyway. So you're not completely neglected.
No.
But
when you say it like that, nearly 50 a year, that's an awful lot of indies.
Yeah,
we're coming desperately close to the end of some of my bookmark folders,
and then we'll just cycle back.
Just start again.
Nobody will notice, Jerry.
That's true. It has been a while, and there are definitely some that we should come back to. But we have our 3 for 2023, and the very first one we're kicking off is Piano Wargames, and these are some of the most beautiful Napoleonics you will find. It's a stunning site that comes via the medium of STLs and metals. So anybody who knows piano will know that it tends to focus in on a very specific period, so around 1809, but because they're Napoleonics, the miniatures work for multiple years around that. But he does his best to focus not on the big names like the French and the British that you're constantly seeing, but instead trying to complete smaller forces from various coalitions that were formed and disbanded and formed again. As you can see, there are things like the Tyroleans and Austrians and Bavarians. There was a little war, the Tyrol Mountains of Austria, that lasted for like 6 months type of thing. And if you want to recreate that, you can, because he's done all the metals, which is insanity. Obviously, you do have to have a Napoleon, though. And the fact that he does, I mean, why not? Why not have it? If you're going to have one, have a stunner. Have an absolute stunner. But piano,
it's a great Napoleon. He looks just like the Bill and Ted version.
He does. There you can't quite see it because of his coat, but that's his Ziggy Pig sticker. But if you start going through the ranges, and there are many and varied, there they are via the medium of STL, and they are via the medium of metal. So
when you say there they are, is it the same sculpts or are they slightly different sculpts?
No, they're sculpted as STLs, but made that they can be cast in metal. So they flit back and forth between them, and you can quite happily go into any of them in more detail. As you can see, here's the Hessen-Darmstadt forces, and like I say, the ranges are extensive, and the sculpts themselves are beautiful.
Wow, they look class.
Incredible. There's Marshall. Is that Marshall Ney? No.
No. These are all.
It's got the names under them.
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm just looking at them. Yeah.
Look, Lloyd shots as well, Lloyd. He knew you were coming here.
And big pictures.
Big pictures.
Yeah. That's not needed for indies. I'm quite happy with stamp size pictures, or even no picture at all. Just a little line of text telling me, and then I'll send off 50p.
Look at the dog.
Yeah.
Yep. It's the Crown Prince Friedrich.
The other thing that's really nice about
There's your
the
STLs.
Piano Wargames range as well is that it's all done effectively for 28mm stuff, so you can fit it in alongside everything else. But if you get the digital files, they've been done in such a way that they can be scaled, so you can bring them down to 15 and all sorts of different directions.
I'm thinking about borrowing up to 32s.
Well, you can do that as well. Yeah, you could go in all sorts of different directions.
Proper big toy soldiers look,
and they hold the detail just as well as you would think, which is really nice to see. So
yeah, another thing that I really enjoy about this website is the downloads. Because if you're just getting into Napoleonics, or if you already played Napoleonics but are interested in some of these smaller nations, there are painting guides, there are the banners and flags available for printing, which takes the heavy lifting out of the research side of things. I know some people love it. Some people just really couldn't be bothered with the research and don't want to be picking up umpteen books on uniforms of the Napoleonic War. So you can just get in here and go, well, what are the collar and cuffs? What should the regimental standards be for X, Y, and Z?
There's painting guides in there too.
Yeah. So you just go, right, I want 2 Bavarians. Here's the flags for the Bavarian regiments. Here's a painting guide for the Bavarians. Here's a painting guide for horses. Bish, bash, bosh. Put your nose to the grindstone. Get in there and get your army done. Piano. Beautiful stuff for an indie.
Just incredible.
Mm.
Absolutely incredible.
Now, our next nomination is a very old school feel from an old school style sculptor with Satyr Art Studio. And these I absolutely adore. I'm a big fan of the Old Hammer community. I'm a big fan of this style of miniature. And scalpers on eBay have a lot to answer for, generally at the point of a bayonet. However, one of the things they have done is give small indie sculptors and stores like this as sort of a lease of life, because if people go, I really want to do 3rd edition fantasy, or I want to play 5th edition Old Hammer, and I want to get my hands on some goblins or whatever it happens to be, and then you look at the eBay prices for the originals and go, I can't afford that. I'll just buy a new car instead. So being able to come in to somebody like this who sculpts alternative models in the classic style. Like so if you have some already, if you have an old army that you want to add to, then that's very easily added to without them looking totally out of place. Sometimes when you add in new figures, you can spot them from a mile away. You know, skeletons 5 times the muscle mass of a skeleton from the 80s, that sort of thing.
If you're into your old miniature dungeon exploring, like HeroQuest style, this would be a good place too.
Well, and the beauty of that, as I have been discovering these recent weeks and months, is you don't need to buy a whole lot of them. You know, it's not like having to buy armies full of stuff. You get a handful of them, and you can paint them up in an evening. And away you go.
And you end up with a woman with a sack full of cats battering the
retired adventurers.
Somebody out with the retired adventurers, which I just think are great. You know,
that guy with his table tennis bats.
Frying pans. You can't take you anywhere. You're
good old whiff waff.
Absolutely the worst.
This was my favorite of the sets, and this was the one that drew me to Satyr art as well, because it's the classic Cursed Company style, which I love.
Winged helmets, Lloyd.
Well, this guy, I'm looking at this guy. He just have a skull thing going on.
He's just got Sally Helm and a massive skull as a.
Cut that off.
Well, those are shields, so they may not be cast on those.
I think they're separate. Pole with the bats.
I know you get that. That's your bat pole. If you don't have a bat pole, you can't slide down to get to the bat cave. And then you're left all alone and ready to be crippled by somebody. But these, I mean,
Did they hire you as their photographer, Jerry?
No,
because
unfortunately
there's a distinct blurriness to all of these images.
That is the sign of movement and motion and action. And
all right, okay.
There you can see them all static, but the other ones are running towards you.
Moving in the other ones.
Moving in the other ones.
Because they set the camera to 12 frames a second.
Gorgeous range. That is a gorgeous range.
Yeah.
So
the
thing that's really nice about it is that it's fantasy, but it's also sci-fi as well, as you can see there. The other thing, it's always based on artwork, and then there's always credit given to like what might have inspired a particular range, which I think is always nice to see. And everything that comes out is always built with that kind of level of love for the worlds of like Old Hammer and all that kind of thing as well, which I think is always nice to see. So yeah,
it's really, crazy, really nice. Because 15 years ago, this is what we had pretty much. There was the plastics and stuff, and the plastics were beautiful because they were plastic. They were easy to work with, and then they started to get really smooth lines and stuff like that there, and you were able to do things with them, the machining them. And then we got spoiled a little bit with all these wonderfully, beautifully, absolutely technically perfect miniature sculpts. And now that's all you see is all these wonderfully, beautifully, technically perfect miniature sculpts. And it's horrible. And now I find myself looking at these with their little imperfections.
You need the imperfections.
And I just crave them because of the character.
You've got perfection burnout is what it is.
Yes.
You know the best example of this? Do you remember Baby from Dirty Dancing?
Yes.
Yeah.
She had a very distinctive nose.
Yes.
Yes.
After that film, she got plastic surgery done to get it sort of narrowed and thinned. And at that point, she looked like every other actress from that period of time and never really worked again.
Yeah.
She just faded into obscurity. And that's what modern miniatures are in some respects. They are the shaved nose.
And the plastic surgeon adjusted perfection, and it's like, yeah, but it lacks.
When everyone's special, no one is.
Yeah, that's it.
That's it. Thing. Yeah.
So.
And so our second nomination in satire, obviously harkening back to the old hammer aesthetic of the 80s and 90s, and I mean, it just brings a misty eye. Beautiful, absolutely beautiful. Speaking of beautiful, our third nomination for our indie are some bloody miniatures that are bloody fantastic. And in here are a collection of absolutely stonking English Civil War figures. And this is a range that
look at these.
This is a range that we've constantly looked at. This is a range that I dangled in front of Ben many months ago.
I smell Ben, yeah.
Where Ben was going, I don't really. I'm going, have you seen bloody miniatures though, Ben? And it's like, oh my God. And I mean, the amount of times where I look at ECW and I think, you know what? I really should. I don't want to. How will I? And, you know, the idea of maybe doing a full English Civil War force isn't really what I'm after, but potentially with this range, because it's so not just bespoke, but individualized, characterized, means that you could quite happily get in there and go, you know what, I'll do something skirmishy. I'll use them in Silver Bayonet, or use them in Altar of the Dark Gods, or some other skirmish. I think there's a Witch Hunter game coming from guy who does Fantastic Battles. Nick is working on an ECW Witch Hunter game, and I'm going, well, that might be the opportunity to get small units of people going door to door and trying to find the witches, at which point you go, let's round up all the young unmarried ladies and put them to trial. And then you go, you know what? How about you don't? How about you jog on, Witch Hunter General, with your witch burning pot and your stakes? No, none of that. Anyway, so yeah, it's a terrific range that isn't just drunken looters and your standard sort of roundhead parliamentarian and your royalists, but a nice blend of almost civilians defending their homes as well. So it's just got so much character and love in it, and there are mounted versions of same as well. So it's just a range that just keeps giving so much more over and over again. And again, the download section, and this is one of the things I really love about some of the indies. It's whenever you get in there and you go, but how do I paint my English Civil War? And I go, well, that's really simple. You just go ahead and download our 30-page, here's how you paint your English Civil War booklet.
Is it not just any old color you want, though, based on that?
can be, but it also, the English Civil War was the start of uniformity, if you will. The new model army, the royalists, Carlists coming in as well, certain Highlanders. So you were hitting a point where, apart from being a sort of standard painting guide showing you how to do it if you've never done it before, it gives you a really good idea of what you should be aiming for, because sometimes where you hit that period of, again, it's the historical research, it's already been done for you by somebody, so you don't have to worry about going, well, what should X, Y, and Z have? And sometimes people go the other way, where they're so used to seeing super uniformity. So Montrose, his lovely red coated men with the blue collars and cuffs, and like from the 1700s, but they think then that should be being used in English Civil War, and maybe that level of uniformity isn't there. So having somebody do that research and heavy lifting, I think, is always good to break it up. It means one less book for me to have to buy because I'm running out of shelf space massively. So
gorgeous stuff.
Those are our three potentials for Indie of the Year. Our first is our runner-up, though. And it is the Old Hammer World of Satire Art Studio. Absolutely bajankers, stunning collection the demons have got to be seen to be believed. They are.
They may be coming to join my corn demon collection.
Yeah,
In fact,
really.
they are.
So, there's an absolute shocker to nobody at all. And our indie of the year for 2023 is Piano Wargames.
Oh, congratulations, Piano.
They're just such a stunning and exceptional range of the smaller peoples.
I think the thing that really sold it to me was the fact that effectively it came out of nowhere. And it was like, cool, here's a Kickstarter with a bajillion Napoleonic miniatures for a little section of the war that you don't quite know about, but I think everybody else should know about. And then to see them in such glorious designs as you saw there that are available as STLs and physical miniatures was just amazing. It was one of the reasons why I went down the Napoleonic rabbit hole last year and got into all sorts of different things.
It's as if Napoleonics just doesn't go out of fashion for some reason.
Yeah.
It's absolutely madness, isn't it? It is. But yeah, it's the sheer volume that gets churned out as well by a one-man operation. I think he does a lot of the painting as well for the website. So. And as you can see, the painting is top-notch also. Yeah. So it's
that guy's going to work every day, making minis, painting minis, taking photos of minis, nice photos of minis.
That's the most important thing to Lloyd.
I'll tell you what,
shots of minis.
Indie of the year for 2024 will be 3 postage size stamp things. Or I'll just be reading text off a screen. I haven't decided yet. But yeah, every time I turn around, there's another extension to the range, or another nation is being drafted into one of the coalitions. You know, it's like here's the 6th or 7th coalition, and we really need a little tiny statelet with, you know, they went to war with 81 people and came home with 82. You know, like Liechtenstein last time they went to war. They went out and made a friend. It's like, God bless them. So yeah, Piano Wargames, you are our indie of the year for 2023.
Yeah.
Congratulations. This is it, Jerry. This is the big one. This is the OnTableTop Choice Award. This is the one where the team just get to pick something that truly blew their minds in 2023. There are no runners-up. There is only one winner, because there can be only one.
Highlander style.
It's Henry Cavill, isn't it? It's Henry Cavill as our Choice Awards this year, is it?
No.
He's knocking on the door of Caesars to try and get the cult Grandmaster. That's what he's doing. Yeah. But anyway, yes. So as Warren said, this is the OnTableTop Choice Award. And we're going to be diving into this one. And it's someone that we've already talked about on the show already. But I thought it deserved, obviously, this Choice Award because it is pretty freaking amazing. And it goes to the folks behind Black Site Studio. Now, this one's an interesting one. In an era where games seem to be trying to get bigger and bigger, the thing that was really awesome about Black Site Studios, and something that we've looked at over the last year in all the news stories about them and everything else, is that they are being like, yeah, but what if we went the other way? And all of their games have this really fun 2x2, 3x3 style ideas where you play on smaller tabletops with lots of terrain that looks amazing, with wonderful miniatures that tell really interesting and diverse stories. The other thing that's really nice about Black Site Studios and the things that they create is that their games are just wildly different in so many different ways. They have Don't Look Back, which is their horror game. They have Luna, which is their game where you play on the moon as astronauts fighting over territory. They have Hametsu, which we've talked about previously in the show, which is their demon hunting samurai war game. And on top of that, nearly every quarter of last year, they have dived in and they have started creating new and interesting games based on just ideas that they've had that they want to see brought to life. There's an entire game that they've done, which is all about being John Wick, battling badasses in a tower and all sorts of things like that. The other thing that's great about what they've done is that they've effectively come from just a site that effectively created fun pre-colored terrain, really.
Yeah.
And then from there, they just sort of developed and started being like, yeah, but what if we make really cool miniatures based on movies and TV shows that we like? And so that's where we saw them expanding into doing things like their Blade Runner range and things. Then they looked at, as we were seeing here, games that like Don't Look Back and Luna, where they were like, we have a really fun idea. Let's now develop this and play around with it in different ways. And this has developed into new editions of these over the years as well. So obviously this game came out, well, Luna came out a couple of years ago now, and now they've revisited it with a new rule book, new artwork, and new designs.
Swish looking too, yeah.
Oh yeah, it is amazing. And then from there, another thing that they've done that I think is fantastic is that they've also looked at the indie creators out there who are coming up with innovative and interesting ideas, and they've engaged with them to try and bring their games to the tabletop, like they've done over the last, I don't know, 3 or 4 months towards the end of 2023. A bunch of kind of like little tiny indie games where you maybe get like a little tiny set of terrain and maybe a couple of miniatures, and then you sort of dive in and you start building up fun and interesting things like Pit Lord and Night Thirst and stuff like this. All these games have come from the ideas of YouTube creators or small designers that are maybe doing little tiny 2-page rule books and things like that. And so all of these have come together and built up into bigger games that they've gone, you know what, we'll back your idea and we'll bring it to the tabletop and you can have fun with it. And I just love that kind of focus of sort of where they've taken things. And the fact that, as we said at the start of the show, they've looked at indie designers and indie ideas and worked out a way to bring that to the tabletop and make their kind of dreams and ideas reality, which I think is awesome to see. I can only see it getting better as they look to involve more people in their sort of development of their different games. I mean, we talked about Don't Look Back, we talked about Luna. Another one of their games that was really big was Yafsiga as well, which was their really fun, which was their fun kind of fantasy game where you sort of walked into a weird, strange reality and had to go around trying to like work out how to control weird warped creatures that had a sort of quirky kind of grimdarky feel to them, which was fantastic. And it was all done in wonderful Technicolor and everything else in between. Yeah, I mean, it's gorgeous. It's a wonderful marrying of cool ideas for mechanics with art that they love and put lots of attention into, and then building that into making sure that whatever you then play on the tabletop is as cool as it could possibly be. So your miniatures look amazing, your terrain looks amazing, and then everything else in between it looks amazing at the same time as well. So you're playing out really fun cinematic things on the tabletop. And Blacksite Studios just do stunning stuff, and I can't wait to see what they do as we sort of move into the rest of this year and stuff as well.
Well, this is one of the things I was going to mention is obviously they have a fantasy style game. They have a sci-fi / cyberpunk Blade Runner-esque style game. They've got the sort of the Oriental feel, but then it's the outliers that really appeal to me with what they work on. The likes of Lunar, which isn't really technically it's a sci-fi genre, but at no point do people think about, you know, modern-ish astronauts and cosmonauts on the moon's surface doing whatever it is they're doing in their lunar buggies with their little rock drills and stuff and having to deal with things out there. Or Don't Look Back, where you're playing the survivors in sort of 80s slashers or 90s horrors, whatever it happens to be. Those really stand out as being very distinctive, almost unique within the industry, when there are so many people working on similar style games. You know, you see your big fantasy and sci-fi war games over and over again, or you see skirmish games, or people do solo versions of same. So, you know, you see a fantasy mass battle, a fantasy skirmish, a fantasy solo game. It's always elves and dwarves, elves and dwarves, elves and dwarves. That's great. But then for somebody to go, I want a killer clown to start butchering children. You go, yes, we all want that. And maybe they can flee to the moon where they'll be safe. No, they won't be safe on the moon. Killer clowns don't need to breathe. And so it's just it's been interesting seeing them, like you say, develop from the terrain side into their own games, and then from there becoming a publisher as well, and picking out these unique, random and unusual little nuggets, sifting through the quagmire sometimes to find a little gold nugget that's stuck in there. They've done some terrific stuff over the year. Right, congratulations, Blacksite Studios, for our OnTableTop Choice Award. You are the bestest. You are also the lastest for this year. 2023 done. We're done and dusted with you. Bye 2023. See you later. We'll be back for all of this next year for 2024. So this is your opportunity, either here on the YouTubes or over on tabletop.com. Get in. Let us know what you think of our winners, whether you think they should have been in a different order, whether there's anybody we missed, and more importantly, what are you looking forward to in 2024? What's due? What's coming? What do you think we should be keeping our eyes out for, especially in some of the smaller companies around the industry? Because, you know, we'll all know that Mantic and Games Workshop and Atomic Mass Games will be churning out tons of stuff. But here are the small people that are going to be doing something that should really be awarded for it in the next year. We want to know you do my work for me. Thank you very much, Ben. Thank you, Warren. Thank you, Lloyd, and other B and C tier people who we've seen previously. It's been an absolute pleasure taking this review of 2023 with you, and I hope everybody at home has enjoyed it too. Until next time, bye-bye.
Go ahead and check out our other content on screen now. And while you're at it, why not hit subscribe and remember to ding our dong. Go on, you know you want to click it. Go on.